say no more often than we say yes. That there's so many opportunities in front of us. It's about staying focused on the critical few things versus the important many. It's about really focusing on what our core things are that are going to give that leverage, because we only have three resources: our people, time, and money. We have to get the highest ROI out of those three things. I was exposed to about a week or so ago about a number of different AI tools. It's basically like a little mini dashboard. This for me is a good resource to hand to your employees and give your employees like 30 minutes a week to just go and geek out on a lot of these different tools. And I heard a great example of this the other day from a former client of ours, Alex Hermosi. His COO was a member of the COO Alliance. The concept that Alex gave all of his employees was he had them spend 10 hours in a week to try to replace themselves using AI. And they had to present back to the team all the different AI tools they could use to replace themselves. And by doing so, they were able to literally leverage AI, but then clearly take on more work to continue to scale. So this might be a cool, way to get some people started, because AI is not just ChatGPT. Anybody using any other AI tools or even ChatGPT, and how are you using it today?
Yeah, we have a really cool AI tool that we just recently started using. It's called gong.io. And essentially, I'm not sure like how your guys' typical sales process is, but for us, what it does is it analyzes every single Zoom call that our sales guys take, and it breaks it into like different segments. It analyzes every single sales call and then compiles it all into their software.
I've just voice trained a software called Be Human, and Be Human will actually, you have to spend 20 minutes kind of doing all these sentences to voice train it. And then I could do a video. So let's say that I want to do a video right now of, hey, Andrew, we'd love to get your second in command to come to our COO Alliance Connect event in April, blah, blah, blah. It literally will insert Andrew's name, Jason's name, Brodenden's name, and it moves my lips the same kind of a way. Or I could just switch out sentences. So your salespeople can actually do one video, but then using the software, it's almost like a cut and replace automatically. And it literally will replace your sound with the other person's name or whatever sentences you wanted to insert. So that seems to be an interesting tool to use just to be able to send out short videos to prospects. So a couple of I've noticed around ChatGPT. One, it's about the prompts that we're using. It's about what we ask it to do versus what we're being told it's doing. Or one of our COO Alliance members took a 12-page legal agreement, copied and pasted the content in and said, rewrite this as a 1-page brief in grade 10 language so I understand it, and literally turned this 12-page document into a 1-pager that's understandable. So pretty powerful ways that we can start using it. But we really have to make sure that our employees feel safe and secure. So when we're asking them to do these tools, the important thing is to remember to tell them, look, we're not trying to replace you. We love you. We want to keep you. We want to grow you, but we want to leverage this tool. These tools aren't going to replace you. They're going to be a tool that you're going to learn how to use. And the best employees are going to be the ones that start to use them and start to show us they're going to be the most valuable employees. So we need to give our employees that confidence that it's okay to find ways to reduce the amount of hours they work on stuff, because we're still going to fill them up with more stuff to do. All right, what questions do we have? Where do we want to go?
Maybe open-ended on cybersecurity. What are people doing apart from hoping we don't get attacked? And are there any either war stories or just specific tools that people are using to protect themselves?
We just recently implemented Black Talon, and basically we have new restrictions because we found out, some people are using personal computers at times, but it has to be like a dedicated computer, right? So we downloaded this software. Part of it's actually AI, now that I think about it. So it's like 2 pieces in it. And one is like an AI piece that's constantly scanning the computer, and they're able to then log in whenever they need if there's an issue. Then they're actually connecting us with some outside partners that go like to a second layer of security. So we haven't instituted that yet, but Black Talon I used previously in an insurance firm, and it's we're exploring with that, maybe going to like VPN for some of our vendors that we use overseas and whatnot, because of obviously the access they might have, or if they got hacked.
Back when we were building 1-800-GOT-JUNK, we brought in a team to do some risk assessments, and we ended up with 10 potential threats to the business. We ranked them by probability of them happening and what the economic risk was to the company. And then we looked at what the cost was to actually buffer it. And we kind of said, what's a bronze, silver, or gold protection level? Like, we can't afford gold. Silver's probably here. What's bronze? Second one was I was hacked in a pretty big way back in 2017 and was starting to get extorted. It was real extortion. They were in all of my social media accounts, all of my email, everything was getting locked down. I've got all the emails and text messages from the guy. So I reached out on Facebook, and I don't know how this happened, but I got introduced to one of the founders of Anonymous, And I got introduced to this guy, Walter O'Brien, who the TV show Scorpion is based on, and he's got the 4th highest IQ in history. He hacked into the NASA computer system when he was 13 and downloaded the blueprints for the space station. But if you ever wanted a company like Scorpion to advise you on this, they would be a good company to come in and say, here's what we see are the holes, and just say to them, look, I don't want to protect against like a major DNS attack, but I want to protect against, X, or I want a bronze level of protection. I think that might be the approach, is to get a firm like that, but just kind of qualify it as bronze, silver, or gold, and then look at the risk assessment and look at the probability of risk and what your cost is, because you might be better off just getting some good insurance and having great insurance to cover your ass later versus to spend the money on something that's probably not going to happen.
I'll share 2 things that we do. So we have a totally distributed team. Like Brandon, we use a VPN. So all of our overseas workers log into the VPN, then log into our stuff. And then we use a single sign-on solution. We use Okta. Okta is how everybody accesses their application. So when somebody leaves the company, we just turn off Okta. Rather than having to change a password every time, we can just turn off their Okta account in a few seconds, which has made our lives so much easier. Like when we were way smaller, every time somebody would leave, we would have to change all the shared passwords, which was a nightmare. So I definitely recommend Okta or one of those kinds of solutions if you're not using it.
Any thoughts around what's happening with like a recession? Are we noticing anything there? Do you think we're going into one, or do we think that we've still got so much cash out in the economy that we're still good, or are we just kind of cautiously optimistic? Any thoughts on that?
I think we're probably headed towards some sort of downturn, but messaging is still out there. The mass market consumer maybe doesn't necessarily think it's happening. I don't know, like internally for our business, that we've seen any real impact, right? Maybe there's more people financing than there were before, but in general, we haven't seen like a downturn in sales or business internally.
For our industry specifically, the recession will definitely help. So like, more people are looking for like job opportunities, which is another offer that we have. So for us, it's definitely good news. I can see like in the way that we've changed our marketing, like just the headlines that we're using and like what people are typically clicking on. There's more people that are looking for opportunities because they need it than people that are looking for opportunities just because, the economy's great and they want something else.
The inflation piece has been a big uptick for us, right? As people saying like, and what I'm doing now, or see, I'm not going to be able to make ends meet, and I'm not getting, maybe I get my 2% bump every year being here at this company, but I need an opportunity to make ends meet better than that, right? And so that helps us and our business, because then they're looking for those opportunities.
You touched on something that I've now heard 4 times in the last 10 days, and I haven't heard in the last 15 years of working with CEOs and entrepreneurial companies. And it's that more people are looking to finance their purchases. I think we're going into more of a period of stagflation. I think we're going to have the Fed-led because of rates, the consumer-led recession. But then third, I think we're going to have the commercial office space collapse. I don't think we're through the Fed raising rates and Canadian government's raising rates. I think we still have a couple more points to still go. And that seems weird when we've just come through 12 years of really this economic boom. But Andrew's old enough to remember 1982, we had 18.75% interest rates, right? Like, I remember getting my first mortgage back in 1986 at 6.5%. I was like, yeah, I just locked in for 6.5%. I'm like, this is amazing. And now people are pissed if it's 6.5%. I think we're going to have that continue to grow, which is going to hurt people's ability to own. It's going to cause people to get out of some of the properties that they're in. And I think people that the personal side, people are leveraged too much. Like people just don't have any savings and they have a lot of debt, and that debt's going to start to accumulate for them. And they're going to start to see their credit card bills and their interest rate bills are going up at the bank. My fear is businesses like all of ours, anybody who sells a product or sells a service for a fixed price, we're getting all these debt companies to actually finance it, to allow people to buy in. And some have payments for as long as like 72 months. They probably shouldn't be buying. They probably can't afford to really be buying. Maybe they can, whatever it is. But my belief is if somebody can't finance something and pay for it on their own, and we know we're just adding to their debt load, that collapse is starting to come. Like there's going to be a bit of an economic bubble. It doesn't mean we should stop on the financing. I wrote notes the other day of 3 good financing to look into for our use in the business. But it means to me that people are living beyond their means and people are living and buying stuff they can't really afford yet. So it feels like what's happening is this 13 to 12-year trend of buy. Consumers aren't willing to get off that. They're continuing to buy now using all of these financing mechanisms that smart companies are putting in place, which is just kind of extending the possibility of that bubble. The third is one data point, San Francisco currently 26% is unleased. Okay. So it's vacant and no leases. Another 25% is leased, but they're not paying their bills. And the reason for that is landlords don't want to turn to the bank and say they don't have their covenants being met. The bank covenant is as long as you have a signed lease, that's all we need. The fact that you're collecting on it is your business, but they'll loan against signed leases. So as soon as these leases come due, which is really from March of 2020, wherever that 5-year period is, that's really the very, very beginning of the big collapse, but probably even as early as the 2019 leases coming due on their 5-year terms. That's when people start to walk away. And that's a fairly big concern for the economy as well. Has anybody used any of the key tracking or like tracking software with remote employees? And there was a trend of employees are actually looking to try to land 2 or 3 salary positions for 2 to 3 different companies because they're able to work remote and their bosses aren't really watching what they're doing. Like they get paid 40 hours a week to do 12 hours work.
I've done that with VAs in the past and other businesses, right? And they also have taking screenshots, every 10 minutes of what they're doing and those sorts of things. I don't know any other solutions to that really other than that sort of thing. Obviously, they can game that system too, right? There's always someone who's innovative enough to be thinking about, oh, I can probably do 2 jobs at the same time, splitting time and doing this is probably innovative enough to figure out a way to game that system too, right?
2 different laptops.
Two different laptops. They put their mouse like attached to a fan, and it moves
That
back
moves
and
now a
forth
little
like this.
bit. Yeah.
Here's one solution that does work. It works more for a smaller, maybe 100 employees. But it's based on kind of the whole model that we used at College Pro Painters. So at College Pro Painters, back in the late 70s, Greg Clark and his team did time and motion studies, and they would literally watch people paint houses, and they documented different parts of the home and how long it took. So soffits at, first level, second level, third level took longer as you went up, and different size windows based on the number of panes took longer, and they categorized everything so that we could then go out and estimate how long it would take to paint houses. So to take that analogy into the workforce, we could go out, Andrew and I could go out and literally, Andrew could probably still do it today, as could I, in a pretty rough and dirty way, go and estimate any home in any city and probably come plus or minus 10% on how long it would take to paint the home. So you bring that system into the work world, and it's what are the employees working on? What are their deliverables? How long do we want them to spend on those deliverables? And when we understand what they're doing and what they're working on and how long we want them to be able to spend on it, we understand how much we're willing to pay for that output. Now, if they're able to automate and optimize and do stuff faster and leverage, I'm okay with that personally, as long as I know what the output is. I think where most of us get sloppy with hiring, and as we build a company, our mid-level managers get sloppy because they don't really know how to do this. We don't really understand what we're paying people to do. We don't understand the required output that we're expecting or that ROI. So we really don't have a way to measure it. But that might be a workaround, is to think about it on a role-by-role basis, person-by-person basis. What are the things they do? How long is it taking? What are we willing to pay? And we know that they've got about 40 hours worth of work on their plates every week. Then we should be okay with how long they take. I did a survey last year, and I'm still getting updated data ongoing now. We're going to even push for more data points, but we went out and just asked people, if you have a second in command, what are you paying them? And then we were interested to know what's the size of the company, what's their actual title, male or female, what city are they in, what's their total comp, bonuses, any long-term incentives. And it was just interesting to see some data points there. One of the key ones that I started to really wrap my head around was what tends to skew compensation more than anything is putting the wrong title on people. And when you give out a title to someone that is larger than their actual roles and responsibilities, then of course they think that they're supposed to get paid more. And I remember the first group of companies that started to give away big titles. My roommate in college started working for a financial services firm, and he got a VP title. I'm like, wow, you're a vice president with CIBC? He goes, everybody's a vice president with CIBC. And it was the first time in my career that I'd noticed title inflation inside of a company or inside of an industry. And they were doing it to attract people. They were doing it to make these people look more important. But what happens when you do that in a smaller organization, if you're in a 20 to 250 person company and you give away C-level or VP titles to people, they think they're vice presidents. They think they're C-level. And the reality is maybe they're not a CFO at all. Maybe they're barely a vice president of finance. They're probably more a director of finance. So now if you actually do a comp review of what directors of finance get, they're actually paid fairly. I think that's something we have to be very careful with. If you're going to compete against the Bay Area companies that are now hiring everywhere, you better have the proper title in place for the roles and responsibilities. And that actually keeps your compensation a little bit more in check. So make sure that you do a title review at the same time as you're doing a compensation review, because you might actually be able to get your compensation in check by just controlling your titles.
If you give some people too much, then they're going to feel like very entitled. When we were much smaller, and maybe we had a team of like 10, 15 people, the sales guys that were there from the beginning, they really felt like they were entitled to everything because, they were there from the beginning, they were making only commission, but they were making like 20 to 30 grand a month. And then, when we brought new sales guys onto the team and they were just kind of like staying at the same level or getting the same lead volume or maybe not even closing as well, they would kind of like blame it on outside factors other than themselves, even though they are commission-based, they're salespeople. So we found that people who got paid too much would feel very entitled, and you never want to pay anybody too much.
Yeah, it's a great point. I felt like for a while there, we were maybe raising too often. What is everyone's cadence for reviews and raising? Do you guys have one that's set, or are you kind of doing it as a case-by-case basis?
We do it annually. We do it in December. I would always index all the employees' income against inflation. So whatever the CPI increased by, I would try to increase them by the CPI just to at least keep them level set. The only time anyone actually gets a major pay raise is if their roles and responsibilities have increased and if they've at least gotten more skill development, so they need less management time, they've got more autonomy, more P&L responsibility, maybe more strategic insight, but they kind of have to raise their bar to get paid more. I've really taught all of our leadership teams and even client leadership teams that when an employee comes to you and say, hey, I did a great job this year, I should get a pay raise, the response is, well, no, I hired you and paid you to get a great response or get a great result. If you don't get a great result, you get fired. So congrats, you get to keep your job because you're doing great work. That's why we hired you, right? So what I like to do though is pay people at the 80th percentile of the bell curve. I try to find for the proper title in the market that we're in. If I pay them at about the 80th percentile, there'll always be companies that pay a lot more, but around 80th percentile of the bell curve, and then giving them the 5 weeks paid vacation really tends to be enough to actually keep them. The other thing that I'm cognizant of is the whole Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So at the bottom level, the physiological needs, this is the base pay that we pay people. This is their kind of compensation of their salary. The problem when you start giving people annual bonuses, the perks and the bonuses don't pay their bills. And for most of us as business leaders, we already take enough money out of the business to pay our bills. We're quite happy. We can go on whatever vacations we want to. We can make decisions whenever we want to. But for a lot of our employees, they literally save money every year just to go on a vacation. So that end of year bonus that we give them tends to make them happy for 2 weeks. But for the rest of the year, they tend to be living paycheck to paycheck, or they tend to be a little bit more frustrated. It's important to pay people properly and then make sure that these areas are being met, which have nothing to do with compensation or bonuses or perks. It's that they feel safe and secure in their job. They know they're not getting fired. They know they can kind of be vulnerable and open with stuff. They've got friends at work. They like the people they work with. They like their leadership team. They know the open door policy. They're feeling good in the work that they're doing. Maybe we're training them and putting them through the Invest in Your Leaders course. And then up here, it gets into the stuff around the core purpose of the company and the core values of the company and our purpose and our vivid vision and, what we stand for and doing meaningful work. But at the end of the day, we don't pay people a good solid base for the work that they're doing. The rest of the pyramid tends to break down. If you're hiring people in third quarter, you've got to also be prepared that you're not necessarily going to have them starting up in July or August. You're not really going to give them a pay raise 4 months later. So you might have to actually have a policy in place for how does that pay raise go if they're hired after second quarter, right? Or after first quarter. So I'm going to throw something out there just as something I've been speaking about a lot in the last few months. I call it the 2 ladders approach to business. But at the end of the day, I think we need to flip the org chart upside down. That the CEO and the COO are at the bottom of the org chart. And our job is to support our people, right? To support the VPs who are supporting the managers, who are supporting the employees, who are supporting the customers. So it's almost like we have 2 40-foot ladders right beside each other against the side of a home. And your employees are climbing up the left ladder, which is skills. So they got their left hand and their left foot climbing up the skills ladder. And right beside that ladder is another 40-foot ladder. And they're climbing up with their confidence on that ladder. So they got to raise their skills and raise their confidence and grow their skills and grow their confidence. And our job is to make sure that we're constantly growing the confidence of our people and growing the skills of our people. For years have been talking about a book called The Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly. And the whole premise of this is that if you care more about your employees' personal goals and personal dreams, their fears, their insecurities, helping them get out of debt, reconnecting with themselves, their parents, whatever, When you actually are the people who care most about their employees in their life, they'll go through brick walls to build your company. Because the reality is everybody's going through these struggles. Everybody's dealing with the whole human condition, and no one's really ever there to support people. And when we all of a sudden as leaders decide to be that person to help them with their dreams, their goals, their desires, everything, it's amazing to watch what circles back in terms of their commitment to the company, right? I launched this Invest in Your Leaders course. I know a few of you have got some of your employees going through it, but really highly suggest that you put through at least your emerging leaders through that course content, and probably anyone in your team who manages people, put them through that content. At $750 an employee, it's a rounding error on what it actually costs. But these are the core skills that all of the general managers were trained in at College Pro Painters. These are the skills that I then brought into each of the other companies that I helped grow. So basically, this was kind of a rip-off and duplicate of all the core skills that I've ever been trained or certified in. It's the core functioning skills that we need as leaders, stuff around delegation, time management, project management, coaching, one-on-one coaching, running meetings, interviewing, the core skills that if we don't have those core skills as leaders, of course, business is difficult. This is what is one of the biggest problems inside of companies today is I don't think leaders spend enough time cheerleading, saying thank you, expressing gratitude, showing people and thanking people that are living the core values, celebrating for hitting goals or getting projects delivered. We're so much about grow. Here's the next job. Here's the next project. Here's something that's broken. Work harder. Try this. We forget to praise constantly for all the stuff we're getting done. And I think we as leaders need to start celebrating twice as often as we give out new projects. We need to start saying thank you twice as often as we tell people where to improve. We need to show people 6 areas that they're doing great for every 3 areas that they need to improve on, and really build that into our roles. At the end of the day, the CEO should be the chief energizing officer. That energy that we bring in creates more momentum inside of our business. Right? That positive energy is us stirring the Kool-Aid. How many of us have hired somebody and then 3 months later forgotten what they were good at? It's a great opportunity to re-interview them in a way, go back through and read their resume. So when we can help our employees only work on the stuff that we're great at, that raises their confidence. When we can tell them, you're never going to be good at that, don't worry about it, let it go. This isn't school. You're not supposed to be good at that. That raises their confidence. So that can raise the confidence of people is telling them, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me? Even though I'm the COO or CEO. When you have your leadership team meeting on a weekly basis, get a one mid-level manager a week to come in and present to the leadership team. What am I working on? What's going well? What's not going well? Where are we stuck? Kind of what their plan is with their metrics. And they do like a 15-minute presentation to the leadership team. And then you guys grill them and cheer them on. That raises their skill level. Anytime you have a board of advisors meeting or a board of directors meeting, have one of your VPs come in and present at the board meeting. And that's raising their skill level at presenting into a group they don't normally present to. So there's all kinds of ways that I love that in terms of presenting, because it is a skill, right? When we have our COO Alliance meetings, we often get our COOs to present. And then after the COO presents, the rest of the group tells them what they can do better and what they can improve on, or what they can continue doing as well, just with their presentation, just to help them with their platform skills. 2 lessons that I remember from Greg Clark. One was leaders' job is to grow people. Our job is to grow their skills and grow their confidence, but our core job is to grow people. And I've often heard people say, well, I can't delegate that because they don't know how to do it. Well, delegate it to them and then grow them. But keep getting stuff off your plate and then growing the people so they can do more of that is the real way scale happens in our business, is to try to do less and grow people so they can do it more. And then second, the leader's job is to say no more often than we say yes. That there's so many opportunities in front of us. It's about staying focused on the critical few things versus the important many, right? It's about really focusing on what our core things are that are going to give us that leverage, because we only have 3 resources, our people, time, and money. We have to get the highest ROI out of those 3 things. All right, don't stop now. Click here to keep going. There's lots more videos here with more insights for you. So keep growing.